Jake Morrison stood at the large window of Luna Station and watched the alien ships approach. Earth, the 43 vessels moved through space like floating diamonds, their hulls shining with colors that seemed to shift and dance in the starlight. Each ship was beautiful in a way that made Earth's military bases look rough and ugly by comparison. "They're really something to look at," said Colonel Lisa Martinez as she joined Jake at the window. She held a tablet in her hands, running numbers and trying to figure out what kind of weapons the aliens might have. "But pretty doesn't always mean dangerous." Jake nodded but kept his eyes on the approaching fleet. He had been in space for 15 years and he had never seen anything like these ships. They moved with perfect coordination, like dancers performing a ballet that had been practiced 1,000 times. Their hulls seemed to be made of some kind of crystal or metal that bent, light in strange ways. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," called out Lieutenant Don Carter from his position at the communications desk. His voice was tight with excitement and fear. "The Universal Translator is working on it now." The main screen in the command center flickered to life, showing the face of an alien creature. It had large, dark eyes and smooth, pale skin that seemed to glow with its own light. When it spoke, its voice was calm and confident, like a teacher explaining something simple to a child. "People of Earth," the alien said, "I am Admiral Kexthara of the Zephyrian Confederation. We have come to your world to offer you a great gift. You will become part of our empire, and we will protect you from the dangers of the galaxy." Jake felt his jaw tighten. The alien's words were polite, but there was something in its tone that made it clear this was not really an offer. It was a demand. "You have 72 hours to accept our generous proposal," Admiral Kexthara continued. "During this time, our fleet will remain in orbit around your planet. We will demonstrate our capabilities so that you may understand the wisdom of joining us willingly." The transmission ended and the command center fell silent. Jake looked around at his team. Lisa was already typing commands into her tablet, trying to get more information about the alien ships. Don was adjusting his equipment, probably trying to listen in on alien communications. Everyone was doing their job, but Jake could see the worry in their faces. "What do you think, Commander?" asked Captain Amy Brooks as she walked into the command center. Amy was Earth's top diplomat, and she had been trying to establish peaceful contact with alien races for years. Now that aliens had finally come to Earth, they were not the friendly neighbors she had hoped for. "I think they're not here to make friends," Jake said. "Look at their formation. Those ships are positioned for attack, not defense. They're showing us their strength, but they're also ready to use it." Amy nodded. "I've been authorized to attempt negotiations. Maybe we can find a peaceful solution." Before Jake could respond, the alien ships began to move. They spread out in a perfect circle around Earth, each vessel taking up a position that gave it a clear view of the planet's surface. Then, one by one, they began to glow brighter. Strange lights danced along their hulls, and Jake could see energy building up in what looked like weapon systems. "They're charging their weapons," Lisa reported. "But they're not targeting anything. On Earth, they're aiming at that asteroid cluster near Mars." The alien ships fired together, sending beams of pure light across millions of miles of space. The asteroid cluster simply vanished, turned into glowing dust in an instant. The demonstration was visible from Earth's surface, a bright flash that lit up the night sky. "Message received," Jake said quietly. "They want us to know what they can do to our cities." Over the next few hours, the aliens continued their show. They performed complicated maneuvers that showed off their speed and agility. They fired their weapons at space debris, making it clear that nothing in Earth's orbit was safe from their technology. They even used some kind of tractor beam to move Earth's moon slightly, just to prove they could. The people of Earth watched in fear and amazement. News channels showed the alien ships from every angle, and experts tried to explain what the aliens might want. Most people seemed to think that resistance was hopeless. The alien ships were clearly more advanced than anything Earth had ever built, but Jake knew something that the aliens didn't know. He had been part of Earth's secret defense program for 10 years, and he knew that things were not as simple as they appeared. "Sir," Don said quietly, "I'm getting coded transmissions from the outer system. The mining ships are reporting in." Jake allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Tell them to maintain their positions and wait for orders." Lisa looked up from her tablet. "Commander, I've been analyzing the alien weapons. They're using focused energy beams, probably some kind of particle accelerator technology. Very advanced, but not beyond our understanding." "What about their defenses?" Jake asked. "Energy shields, as far as I can tell. They're designed to deflect beam weapons and absorb particle impacts. Very effective against the kind of technology they're using." Jake nodded. "The aliens were showing Earth exactly what kind of weapons they expected humans to use. They were demonstrating their defenses against energy weapons and particle beams, but they were also revealing their weaknesses." "Hammy?" Jake said to the diplomat. "Go ahead and try to negotiate with them. But don't give them any real information about our capabilities. Let them think we're impressed by their light show." Amy nodded and left to begin her diplomatic mission. Jake turned back to the window and watched the alien ships continue their demonstration. They were beautiful, graceful, and obviously powerful. But they were also arrogant, and arrogance was a weakness that could be exploited. "Don," Jake said, "send a coded message to Fleet Command. Tell them that the aliens are exactly what we expected them to be. Begin Phase 1 of Operation Homecoming." Dan's fingers flew over his keyboard. "Message sent, sir. Lisa, I want you to keep analyzing their technology. Look for any weaknesses in their shields or weapons. Pay special attention to how they respond to different types of attacks." "Yes, sir," Lisa said. "What about their ship designs?" "They're unlike anything in our databases. They're built for fighting other energy weapon users," Jake explained. "Smooth hulls to deflect beam weapons, energy shields to absorb particle impacts. They're designed for the kind of civilized warfare that most alien races probably practice." "And we don't practice civilized warfare," Lisa said with understanding. "No," Jake agreed. "We don't." Outside the window, the alien ships continued their elegant dance around Earth. They fired their weapons with perfect precision, moved in formations that spoke of centuries of military tradition, and radiated confidence in their obvious superiority. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. Jake thought about the mining ships scattered throughout the asteroid belt, the cargo haulers near Jupiter, and the research stations on the moons of Saturn. The aliens had studied Earth's public communications, but they had not seen the secret preparations that had been made in the dark spaces between the planets. "Sir," Don said, "Amy is requesting permission to begin formal negotiations." "Granted," Jake said. "Tell her to be polite but firm. We need to buy time for the outer system assets to get into position." As Amy's diplomatic mission began, Jake continued to watch the alien fleet. They were impressive, certainly, but they were also predictable. They were following the same pattern that had worked for them in 17 other star systems. They were showing their strength, demanding surrender, and expecting their opponents to be overwhelmed by their obvious superiority, but Earth was not like the other 17 systems. Earth was the home of a species that had been imagining alien invasions for centuries, and they had been preparing for this day since they first looked up at the stars and wondered what might be looking back. Admiral Kexthara stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Radiance, and felt satisfied with how the humans were responding to his demonstration. The primitive creatures had stopped their crude radio chatter and were keeping their simple spacecraft at a respectful distance. Their fear was exactly what he had expected. "The humans are behaving as predicted," reported his tactical officer, a young Zephyrian named Valandra. "Their orbital stations have powered down their weapons and are broadcasting surrender requests." Kexthara nodded. This was how it always went. The inferior species would see the might of the Confederation fleet, understand their hopeless position, and submit to Zephyrian rule. It was a clean, efficient process that had worked in 17 star systems. "Begin the advanced demonstration," he ordered. "Show them the true power of our photonic lance arrays." The Zephyrian fleet moved into a perfect geometric formation, their crystal hulls gleaming as they charged their most powerful weapons. Each ship was a work of art, designed by the greatest minds in the Confederation to be both beautiful and deadly. Their weapons were marvels of engineering, capable of destroying entire cities with surgical precision. The fleet targeted a large asteroid drifting between Mars and Jupiter. 43 beams of pure energy struck the rock simultaneously, turning it into a cloud of glowing particles in seconds. The light show was visible from Earth, a clear message about what would happen to any human city that dared to resist. "Perfect execution," Kexthara said with pride. "The humans will have no choice but to accept our generous offer." On Earth, President Karen Stone sat in the emergency meeting room deep beneath the White House. Around the table sat the most important people in the world's military and scientific community. General Mike Phillips, the head of global defense, was showing satellite images of the alien fleet on a large screen. "They're using coordinated particle beam weapons," explained Dr. Helen Clark, Earth's leading physicist. "The energy output is impressive, but the technology is not beyond our understanding. They're basically using very advanced versions of weapons we experimented with decades ago." "What about their defenses?" asked President Stone. "Energy shields," Dr. Clark replied. "They're designed to deflect beam weapons and absorb particle impacts. Very effective against the kind of technology they're using, but they have limitations." "General." Phillips leaned forward. "What kind of limitations?" "They're designed to stop energy weapons," Dr. Clark explained. "But energy shields don't work the same way against physical projectiles, especially ones moving at high speed. The aliens have built their defenses around fighting other energy weapon users." President Stone looked around the table. "What about our own capabilities? Are we ready?" "More ready than they know," General Phillips said with a slight smile. "The aliens have been studying our public communications, but they missed the important stuff. They think we're still using chemical rockets and gunpowder weapons." "How wrong are they?" President Stone asked. "Very wrong," General Phillips replied. "We've been preparing for this scenario for 50 years. Every science fiction movie, every military simulation, every war game we've ever played has been leading up to this moment." Meanwhile, Jake Morrison continued watching the alien fleet from Luna Station. The aliens were performing another demonstration, this time showing off their ability to move massive objects through space. They were using tractor beams to push Earth's moon slightly out of its orbit, just enough to cause tidal changes that everyone on Earth could see. "They're really enjoying themselves," Lisa Martinez observed. "Look at how they're positioning their ships. They want everyone to see what they're doing." "That's their mistake," Jake said. "They're so focused on showing off that they're not paying attention to what's really happening in the solar system." Dan Carter looked up from his communications console. "Sir, I'm getting reports from the outer system. The cargo haulers near Jupiter are requesting permission to begin Phase 2. "Not yet," Jake said. "Let the aliens finish their show first. We want them to be completely confident before we make our move." The alien demonstrations continued for hours. They showed their ability to destroy targets with pinpoint accuracy, their capacity to move massive objects through space, and their skill at coordinating complex maneuvers across their entire fleet. Each demonstration was more impressive than the last, and the message was clear: resistance was futile. But while the aliens were focused on their performance, other things were happening in the solar system. The mining ships in the asteroid belt were slowly changing their positions, moving closer to key locations. The research stations on the moons of Saturn were powering up equipment that had been dormant for months. The cargo haulers near Jupiter were shedding their outer hulls and revealing the angular shapes beneath. Admiral Kexthara received a transmission from the human diplomat, Captain Amy Brooks. She was requesting a meeting to discuss terms of surrender. The human seemed nervous and frightened, exactly as Kexthara expected. "We are willing to discuss your proposal," Amy said in her transmission, "but we need time to convince our governments. Many of our leaders are reluctant to accept your generous offer." Kexthara was amused by the humans' obvious stalling tactics. "Very well," he replied. "We will give you additional time to make the correct decision. But do not test our patience. We have schedules to keep." Amy nodded gratefully and ended the transmission. Kexthara turned to his tactical officer. "How much longer until the fleet reaches full combat readiness?" 6 hours, Admiral, Valandra replied. "All ships are conducting final system checks and weapon calibrations." "Good. When we are ready, we will begin orbital bombardment of their major cities. A few demonstrations of our power should convince the humans to surrender quickly." What Admiral Kexthara didn't know was that Amy Brooks was buying time for humanity's secret preparations. While she negotiated with the aliens, military commanders across the solar system were coordinating the largest deception in human history. Jake Morrison received a coded message from Fleet Admiral Peter Harrison, the commander of Earth's hidden defense force. The message was short and simple: "All assets in position, awaiting your signal." Jake looked out at the alien fleet, still performing their graceful demonstrations around Earth. They were beautiful ships, manned by a species that had clearly mastered the art of civilized warfare. But they were about to learn that humans had mastered a very different kind of warfare. "Lisa," Jake said, "what's your final assessment of their capabilities?" "They're exactly what we expected," Lisa replied. "Advanced energy weapons, sophisticated shields, excellent coordination. They're built for fighting other civilized species who follow the same rules of engagement." "And we don't follow those rules," Jake said. "No, sir, we don't." Jake turned to Don Carter. "Send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them that the aliens have shown us everything we need to know. It's time to show them what humanity can do." Dan's fingers moved quickly over his keyboard. "Message sent, sir. What about the mining ships?" Lisa asked. "They're not mining ships," Jake said with a smile. "They're heavy cruisers with full armament. We've had them positioned in the asteroid belt for 2 years, waiting for exactly this moment. And the cargo haulers? Destroyers and frigates? We've been moving them into position for months, disguised as commercial vessels." Lisa stared at Jake in amazement. "How long have we been planning this?" "Since the day we first detected alien radio signals," Jake replied. "We knew that someday someone would come to Earth and we wanted to be ready. We've been preparing for every possible scenario." Outside the window, the alien fleet continued their elegant dance around Earth. They were confident, beautiful, and completely unprepared for what was about to happen. They had studied humanity's public communications and concluded that humans were a typical primitive species, armed with crude weapons and driven by simple emotions. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Admiral Kexthara felt confident as he prepared to deliver his final ultimatum to the humans. His fleet had spent 2 days demonstrating their overwhelming superiority, and now it was time to end this charade. The humans had asked for more time to consider surrender, but Kexthara was growing impatient. "Open a channel to Earth," he commanded his communications officer. "It is time to speak with their leaders directly." The transmission connected, and Kexthara found himself speaking not to the nervous diplomat who had been stalling for time, but to a human military officer who introduced himself as Fleet Admiral Peter Harrison of the Terran Solar Defense Force. "Admiral Kexthara," Harrison said in a calm, steady voice, "we have carefully considered your generous offer of protection. However, we must respectfully decline. We have grown rather fond of our independence." Kexthara was stunned by the human's casual tone. Did these primitive creatures not understand what they were facing? "Surely you cannot be serious," he replied. "We have shown you our capabilities. Your species possesses nothing that could threaten vessels of our design." "You are absolutely right," Harrison agreed, and Kexthara felt a moment of satisfaction. But then the human continued, "Our ships were not designed to fight vessels like yours. They were designed to fight ships that were designed to fight vessels like yours." The distinction made no sense to Kexthara. Human logic was clearly as primitive as their technology. "Your words are meaningless," he said. "We will now demonstrate the consequences of refusing our protection." Kexthara ordered his fleet to begin bombardment of Earth's major cities. The beautiful Zephyrian ships moved into attack formation, their weapons charging with deadly energy. But as they prepared to fire, something appeared that changed everything. A massive shape emerged from behind Earth's moon, its hull so black that it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ship was nothing like the graceful curves of Zephyrian design. It was all sharp angles and brutal functionality, covered in weapon systems that Kexthara had never seen before. "Attention, Zephyrian fleet," came a transmission from the black. "Ship, this is Captain Tony Rodriguez of the Terran solar ship Relentless. You are in violation of Terran sovereign space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Kexthara stared at the human vessel in confusion. Where had it come from? His sensors had detected no large ships in the area, and the human craft was clearly a warship of significant size. "Where did that come from?" he demanded of his sensor operator. "Unknown, sir," the operator replied nervously. "It appeared from the shadow of their moon, but our scans showed nothing there." "Impossible," Kexthara muttered. "Begin targeting that vessel. Show these humans what happens when they threaten the Confederation." But before his weapons could lock onto the human ship, his tactical display lit up with new contacts. Ships were appearing all over the solar system, dropping some kind of advanced stealth technology that had kept them hidden. What had looked like a few primitive space stations and mining operations was revealing itself to be something very different. "Sir," his sensor operator reported with growing panic, "I am detecting over 100 human vessels, with more appearing every minute. They are emerging from positions throughout the system." Kexthara watched in disbelief as the human fleet revealed itself. The mining ships in the asteroid belt shed their outer hulls like snakes shedding skin, revealing angular warships bristling with weapons. The cargo haulers near Jupiter transformed into destroyers and frigates. Even the research stations on Saturn's moons were powering up weapon systems. "How is this possible?" Kexthara demanded. "Our intelligence indicated they were a primitive species with limited space capabilities." Fleet Admiral Harrison's voice came through the communication system again, and now Kexthara could hear amusement in the human's tone. "Admiral, you made a fundamental error in your assessment. You studied our public communications and concluded that we were weak. What you failed to understand is that we have been preparing for this moment for decades." The human ships were unlike anything in Kexthara's military database. Where Zephyrian vessels were smooth and elegant, designed to deflect energy weapons, the human ships were covered in angular armor plating and reactive defenses. Their weapons were equally foreign. Massive railguns, missile pods, and strange devices that defied immediate identification. "You see," Harrison continued, "we have been imagining alien invasion since before we left our home planet. We have thought of every possible scenario, every type of enemy, every kind of weapon. When you showed up with your energy shields and photon lances, you were not surprising us. You were confirming our expectations." Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled across the communication channels. "Admiral, you seem surprised. Did you really think a species that spent thousands of years perfecting ways to kill each other would be unprepared for visitors?" Kexthara felt a chill run through him. The humans were not behaving like any species he had encountered before. Every other civilization had been intimidated by the Confederation's superior technology. But these humans seemed almost eager for a fight. "You are making a grave mistake," Kexthara transmitted. "We have conquered 17 star systems. No species has ever successfully resisted us. That's because you have been fighting civilized species," Harrison replied. "Species that follow the same rules of warfare that you do. Species that build their ships to fight other energy weapon users. We are not civilized, Admiral. We are human." To prove his point, the human ship Relentless fired a single weapon at a small asteroid floating nearby. But instead of the elegant energy beam that Kexthara expected, the human ship launched a solid projectile that struck the asteroid at incredible speed. The kinetic impact was devastating, turning the rock into a cloud of debris. "Kinetic weapons," Kexthara breathed. "They are using primitive kinetic weapons. Not primitive, Harrison corrected. Practical? Your shields are designed to stop energy weapons and they work perfectly. Unfortunately for you, we stopped using energy weapons as primary armaments 50 years ago. We found that sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Kexthara's tactical officer was frantically running calculations. Sir, their kinetic weapons will penetrate our shields. Our defenses are not designed to stop solid projectiles moving at those velocities. Impossible, Kexthara said, but he could see the fear in his officer's eyes. Kinetic weapons are crude and inefficient. No advanced civilization uses them as primary weapons. That's where you're wrong, Captain Rodriguez said. We use them because they work. You can't deflect a chunk of metal moving at 10% of light speed with an energy shield. You can't jam a guided missile with electronic warfare. You can't negotiate with a nuclear warhead. The human fleet was now fully revealed, and Kexthara could see that he was outnumbered 3-1. But more disturbing than their numbers was their behavior. The human ships were not arranged in neat formations like civilized vessels. They were scattered throughout the solar system in patterns that seemed random but were obviously calculated for maximum tactical advantage. Last chance, Admiral, Harrison said. Leave now, or we will be forced to defend ourselves. And I promise you, we are very good at defending ourselves. Kexthara looked at his beautiful fleet, then at the ugly, functional human warships surrounding them. For the first time in his military career, he felt uncertain. The humans were not following any of the established rules of civilized warfare. They were something new, something dangerous. Sir, his tactical officer whispered, what are your orders? Kexthara stared at the human fleet and realized that he had made a terrible mistake. He had assumed that all species would behave the same way, would follow the same patterns of development. But humans were different. They were unpredictable, violent, and apparently very well prepared. Prepare for combat, he said finally, but be ready to withdraw if necessary. These humans are not what we expected them to be. As the two fleets faced each other across the void of space, Kexthara realized that the age of easy conquest was about to end. The humans had turned warfare into something brutal and efficient, and they were about to teach the galaxy a lesson that would not be forgotten. The first shot of the war came when a Zephyrian cruiser named Whispered Song attempted to bombard New York City. Captain Tony Rodriguez watched the alien ship charge its weapons and knew he had only seconds to act. The Relentless fired 3 kinetic kill vehicles from its main railgun, each projectile no larger than a telephone pole but moving at incredible speed. Admiral Kexthara watched in horror as the solid metal rods punched through his cruiser's energy shields like they were made of paper. The Whispered Song's beautiful crystal hull crumpled under the impact, and the ship began breaking apart in a shower of debris and escaping atmosphere. Impossible, Kexthara whispered. Our shields should have stopped those projectiles. Sir, his tactical officer reported with a shaking voice, the human weapons are using pure kinetic energy. Our shields are designed to deflect particle beams and energy weapons, not solid objects moving at relativistic speeds. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Zephyrians fought with the precision and grace that had brought them victory across 17 star systems. But they were facing an enemy that did not follow the established rules of civilized warfare. Captain Ellen Murphy commanded the destroyer Vengeance and led a squadron of smaller, human ships in a coordinated attack on the Zephyrian left flank. Her ships moved in patterns that seemed chaotic, but were actually carefully calculated to exploit weaknesses in alien formation doctrine. All ships begin pattern 7, Murphy ordered over the communication system. Remember, they expect us to fight fair. Don't give them what they expect. The human ships scattered like a school of fish, each vessel taking a different approach to the alien formation. Some fired missiles that could change direction multiple times during flight. Others launched clouds of small kinetic projectiles that created a deadly obstacle field. The most disturbing weapons were the nuclear mines. Disguised as floating debris, Kexthara tried to maintain his fleet's elegant battle formation, but the humans were making it impossible. Every time his ships moved into a coordinated pattern, the humans would attack from an unexpected angle or use a weapon that his forces had never encountered before. "Sir, the humans are using quantum disruption torpedoes," reported his weapons. "Officer, they are somehow passing through our shields without triggering them. How is that possible?" Kexthara demanded. "Unknown, sir. The torpedoes seem to exist in a state of quantum uncertainty until they reach their target, then they collapse into normal matter inside our hulls." Another Zephyrian ship, the Morning Star, exploded as one of these impossible weapons materialized inside its engine room. Kexthara realized that the humans were not just using different weapons, they were using different physics. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," he ordered. "Do not attempt to maintain formation. Survival is the priority." But the humans had anticipated this response as well. As soon as the Zephyrian ships broke formation, human vessels appeared from positions that should have been empty space. They had been hiding behind asteroids, using the gravity of planets to mask their approach, and employing stealth technology that made them invisible until they chose to attack. Captain Rodriguez coordinated the human assault from the Bridge of the Relentless. His ship's main guns fired continuously, sending streams of metal projectiles at any alien vessel that came within range. But his most effective weapons were the smaller ships under his command. "Murphy, take your squadron and hit their command." "Ship," Rodriguez ordered. "Use the Jupiter slingshot maneuver we practiced." Captain Murphy acknowledged the order and led her ships in a dangerous flight path that took them behind Jupiter, using the planet's gravity to accelerate to incredible speeds before emerging to attack the eternal radiance from an unexpected direction. The human tactics were brutal and effective. They used gravity wells to slingshot missiles around planets, employed asteroid fields as cover for ambush attacks, and coordinated strikes across multiple star systems simultaneously. Their ships fought with a savage efficiency that spoke of a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. "Sir, we have lost 22 vessels," Kexthara's tactical officer reported. "The humans are using weapons and tactics we have never encountered. Our battle doctrine is useless against them." Kexthara stared at his tactical display and saw his beautiful fleet being torn apart by weapons that seemed designed specifically to counter every advantage the Zephyrians possessed. The humans were not just winning, they were demonstrating a level of tactical sophistication that terrified him. "How did they know?" he asked aloud. "How did they know exactly what weapons to build, what tactics to use?" Fleet Admiral Harrison's voice came through the communication system as if he had heard the question. "Admiral, you assumed that because we appeared primitive, we were unprepared? What you failed to understand is that we have been studying warfare for our entire history. Every conflict, every battle, every tactical innovation, we have recorded it all and learned from it." A new type of human weapon appeared on the battlefield. Drones that moved independently and seemed to think for themselves. They swarmed around Zephyrian ships like angry insects, each one carrying enough explosive power to cripple a cruiser. The aliens had no defense against such small, fast-moving targets. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "the humans are deploying artificial intelligence weapons. The drones are learning our defensive patterns and adapting their attacks in real time." Kexthara felt his confidence crumbling. The humans were using not just different weapons, but different concepts of warfare. They treated battle not as a civilized duel between honorable opponents, but as a problem to be solved through any means necessary. "We need to withdraw," his tactical officer advised. "We cannot fight an enemy that refuses to follow the rules of engagement." "There are no rules," Captain Rodriguez's voice cut through their communications. "This is war, not a game. You came to our home and threatened our people. Did you expect us to fight fair?" The human fleet was closing in from all directions now, and Kexthara could see that his remaining ships were trapped. The humans had used their time well, positioning their forces to cut off every escape route. "Admiral," came a transmission from one of his surviving captains, The humans are jamming our quantum communication arrays. We cannot call for reinforcements. Kexthara realized that the humans had thought of everything. They had not just prepared weapons to fight the Zephyrian fleet. They had prepared to prevent the fleet from calling for help or escaping to warn others. How long have they been planning this? He wondered aloud. Since the day we first looked up at the stars and wondered what might be looking back, Harrison answered. Every science fiction story, every military simulation, every war game we have ever played has been preparation for this moment. You are not our first alien invasion, Admiral. You are just the latest in a long series of scenarios we have been preparing for. The human ships continued their relentless assault, using weapons that defied conventional military thinking. They fired projectiles that could change course mid-flight, deployed energy fields that interfered with Zephyrian sensors, and used psychological warfare tactics that disrupted alien coordination. Sir, his communications officer reported, the humans are broadcasting our tactical frequencies and jamming our command signals. Our captains cannot coordinate their actions. Kexthara looked around his bridge and saw fear in the eyes of his crew. These were Zephyrians who had conquered worlds, who had never known defeat. But they were facing an enemy that fought with a ferocity and cunning that they had never imagined possible. All remaining ships, he broadcast to his fleet, attempt to break through the human lines and escape to hyperspace. This engagement is lost. But even as he gave the order, Kexthara knew it was too late. The humans had prepared for this moment too well, and they were not going to let their enemies escape to warn the rest of the galaxy. Admiral Kexthara's flagship, the Eternal Radiance, shuddered under another barrage of human kinetic weapons. Half of his beautiful fleet was now floating debris, and the remaining ships were scattered and desperate. The humans had not just defeated his forces, they had crushed them with a level of tactical superiority that he had never imagined possible. Sir, we have lost 31 vessels, his tactical officer reported, her voice barely above a whisper. The humans have us completely surrounded. All escape routes are blocked. Kexthara stared at his tactical display and saw the truth of their situation. The human ships had formed the perfect trap, using the gravity wells of planets and moons to create corridors that led nowhere but to destruction. Every time one of his captains tried to break free, they ran into walls of kinetic fire that tore their ships apart. How is this possible? He asked, not really expecting an answer. We are the Zephyrian Confederation. We have conquered 17 star systems. We are the masters of galactic warfare. Captain Tony Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system, calm and steady despite the chaos of battle. Admiral, you were the masters of your kind of warfare, but you never fought anyone like us before. Another Zephyrian cruiser, the Silver Dawn, tried to make a run for the edge of the solar system. It managed to travel less than 1,000,000 kilometers before human missiles caught up with it. The weapons moved faster than anything the aliens had ever seen, changing direction multiple times to avoid defensive fire before striking home with devastating effect. Sir, the communications officer called out, Captain Velmorin of the Silver Dawn is requesting immediate assistance. His ship is breaking apart. We cannot help him, Kexthara said bitterly. We cannot even help ourselves. The human fleet continued its methodical destruction of the Zephyrian forces. They fought with a coordination that seemed impossible for such a chaotic species. Every ship knew exactly where it needed to be, every weapon fired at the perfect moment. Every maneuver was calculated to maximum effect. Captain Ellen Murphy's destroyer squadron had just finished, destroying 2 more alien vessels when she received new orders from Fleet Admiral Harrison. Murphy, take your ships and surround the alien flagship. We want to capture their commander alive if possible. Murphy acknowledged the order and led her ships in a complex maneuver that brought them around the Eternal Radiance from 6 different directions. The alien ship was beautiful even in defeat, its crystal hull reflecting the light of distant stars. But beauty would not save it from human weapons. Attention Zephyrian flagship, Murphy broadcast. This is Captain Ellen Murphy of the Terran Navy. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now, and your crew will be treated according to the laws of war. Kexthara laughed bitterly at the human's offer. Laws of war? You speak of laws while using weapons that ignore every convention of civilized combat? Our laws, Murphy replied, not yours. You came to our home as invaders. You threatened our people and demanded our surrender. What did you expect us to do? The admiral looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were Zephyrians who had never known defeat, who had served in a military that prided itself on honor and tradition. Now they were beaten, surrounded by an enemy that fought with tactics they could not understand or counter. Sir, his weapons officer reported, all our primary systems are damaged. We have no shields, limited weapons, and our engines are operating at 30% capacity. What about the other ships? Kexthara asked. The Morning Light and Bright? Star are still functional, but they are also surrounded. The rest of our fleet is either destroyed or disabled. Fleet Admiral Harrison's voice came through the communication system one final time. Admiral Kexthara, this is your last chance. Surrender now, or we will finish what you started. Kexthara closed his eyes and thought about the moment when he had first seen the human fleet reveal itself. He had been so confident, so certain of victory. The humans had seemed primitive and weak, armed with crude weapons and driven by simple emotions. How wrong he had been. Admiral, Harrison continued, you made a fundamental error in your assessment of humanity. You saw our entertainment media and concluded that we were violent and disorganized. You saw our news broadcasts and decided we were easily frightened. You studied our public communications and assumed we were technologically inferior. What you failed to understand, Captain Rodriguez added, is that everything you saw was exactly what we wanted potential enemies to see. We have been preparing for this day since we first detected alien radio signals 50 years ago. Kexthara opened his eyes and stared at the tactical display. The human ships were holding their positions, waiting for his decision. They could have destroyed his flagship at any time, but they were giving him a chance to save his remaining crew members. You planned all of this, he said, not really asking a question. Every detail, Harrison confirmed. We knew that someday someone would come to Earth with superior technology and demand our surrender. We knew they would demonstrate their weapons and expect us to be intimidated. We knew they would underestimate us because we would appear primitive by their standards. So, you prepared for invasion, Kexthara said. We prepared for every possible scenario, Rodriguez replied. Energy weapons, kinetic weapons, biological warfare, psychological warfare, technological warfare. We imagined every type of enemy and developed countermeasures for each one. But how did you know what weapons to build? Kexthara asked. How? Did you know our weaknesses? Because we studied ourselves, Harrison explained. We looked at our own military development and asked what kind of defenses we would build if we had your technology. Energy shields made perfect sense for protecting against energy weapons. Smooth hulls would deflect particle beams. Coordinated formations would maximize firepower. Then we built weapons specifically designed to defeat those defenses, Murphy added. Kinetic weapons that ignore energy shields. Missiles that can outmaneuver coordinated formations. Drones that swarm and overwhelm point defense systems. Kexthara finally understood. The humans had not just prepared for an alien invasion, they had prepared for an invasion by aliens exactly like the Zephyrians. They had predicted his tactics, anticipated his weapons, and developed countermeasures for everything his civilization could throw at them. We are not the first species you have planned for, he realized. No, Harrison said. You are one of dozens of scenarios we prepared for. We have plans for machine intelligences, hive minds, energy beings, and species we have not even imagined. Yet, the one thing we were certain of was that someday someone would come to Earth expecting an easy conquest. Sir, his tactical officer whispered, what are your orders? Kexthara looked at the human ships surrounding his flagship and made his decision. All remaining Zephyrian vessels, this is Admiral Kexthara. Cease fire and prepare to surrender. The battle is lost. The firing stopped and space became suddenly quiet. The eternal radiance drifted in the silence. its beautiful hull scarred by human weapons but still intact. Around it, the few surviving Zephyrian ships powered down their weapons and waited for instructions from their captors. "Thank you, Admiral," Harrison said. "Your crew will be treated well. You have fought bravely, even though you chose the wrong enemy." "What happens now?" Kekstara asked. "Now you go home," Harrison replied. "You will tell the Zephyrian Confederation what happened here. You will explain that humanity is not a client species waiting to be conquered. We are an independent civilization that is prepared to defend itself. And if they send a larger fleet, then we will destroy that one too," Rodriguez said simply. "We have been preparing for this fight for 50 years, Admiral. Your fleet was just the first test of our capabilities." Kekstara nodded slowly. He understood now that the age of easy conquest was over. Humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy, not with diplomacy or science, but with the one language that every species understood: strength. "Message understood," he said finally. "The galaxy will know what happened here." As the broken remnants of the Zephyrian fleet prepared for their long journey home, Admiral Kekstara sent one final transmission to the Confederation High Command: avoid the Sol system at all costs. The humans are not what they appear to be. They are something far more dangerous. They are prepared